What's happening, everybody? On today's Locked On SEC, we're going to be joined by our buddy Chris Marler. We'll catch up on all the latest SEC headlines, including comments made ahead of the Alabama-Tennessee game happening this weekend, some stats on Will Rogers, some comments from Kirby Smart on their positioning in the Vegas odds, and much, much more. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. We'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. Let's wait no further. Let's bring in our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast as we head into yet another week of SEC football. Week 7, Marler. We are at that midway point in the season. How are we feeling?
I hate that we're at the midway point of the season. Like, that part sucks. Feeling good, though. Glad that A&M game's over.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Marler has a rooting interest in the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they want to jump off a bridge because they win a close game. God forbid. Everybody else in the SEC does it, and they celebrate. Alabama goes, we might have to consider firing Saban after this.
Okay. What's amazing about this is that usually I would agree with how absurd but also accurate that comment is, but I was a little bit surprised they dropped 2 spots in the polls with a backup quarterback who had 3 turnovers in a game they won. I will say that.
It's a little crazy, and it's setting up for an even crazier week. So let's jump into it. Let's do our SEC headlines. Oh, no. Our sounder didn't work. All right, let's just jump into it. Former Vols linebacker Marler Henry To'oTo'o on the Alabama-Tennessee game said, quote, just another game on the road for us. Downplaying it a little bit. Now, he did go on to say big rivalry game tradition-wise. I'm super excited to be able to uphold the tradition and the legacy of Alabama football. But, look, this is a guy who played at Tennessee, right? Started his career there, finishing off his career at Alabama. Should they really be just saying it's just another game on the road for us? This is 2 top 10 teams.
It's 2 top 10 teams. It's the highest they've both been ranked, I think, all time in this series, which is kind of crazy. I don't know how young your audience base is, but I will say that a lot of people forget that when you look at just from the history of the league, the number 2 team in this conference with the most tradition from start to finish, and Georgia fans, settle down. But it's Tennessee, with in terms of championships, in terms of relevance year in and year out over the decades. This is a really, really big rivalry. These 2 teams do hate each other. It has lost a little bit of its luster when you win 15 in a row and you win by an average of 25 and at 0.9 points per game in that rivalry during that 15 years. But, listen, I grew up in the era where I'm not making this up, but I grew up in the era where I watched all them Clausens and Peyton Manning beat Bama 7 years in a row. And I will never forget October 26th, maybe it was 25th, 2002, I said for a long time was the best day of my life because I got a bunch of recruiting letters from when I was in high school. And then we went to go see the Rolling Stones in concert that night. And then Bama beat this streak. And so it's a big rivalry, man. It's a big rivalry. But yeah, he's got the saving coach speak down pat. I'll say that.
We'll get into actually talking about this matchup in just a little bit. Another headline of the weekend, Mississippi State quarterback Will Rogers, now the all-time leader in completions in the history of the SEC. He passed Aaron Murray, whose record stood since 2013. This was Will Rogers' 28th game. Aaron Murray, it took him 52 games. I know it's the Mike Leach air raid system, but I think that's still pretty damn impressive.
His numbers are stupid compared to some of the stuff we've seen over the years. It's absurd how good that ball doesn't look very good. But did that ball hit his lineman in the head? But no, it is fun to watch. He's been so great, and he's been, like Mississippi State as a team. I think they've kind of flown under the radar. The stuff with Will Rogers, he's finally starting to get his due, and he can play for another 2 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, he probably won't. I don't know. I mean, does he project as, I don't know, like if he has another year after this, like he's having this year,
yeah,
NFL's gonna take a shot on him, right? Like I
don't
know.
He's gonna stay for another year.
Yeah. What's crazy? I was talking to somebody in Arkansas, like they were thinking KJ Jefferson was going to ball out and maybe leave, and then somebody was saying, no, I mean KJ will be back next year. I'm like, wow. I mean, like we're talking about some big name SEC quarterbacks are going to be back next year.
You could lose Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young and still bring back Spencer Rattler, KJ Jefferson, and Will Rogers.
Yeah. Will Levis, I think will still go. Anthony Richardson probably back now.
Yeah.
Although, before the season they were projecting him as a first round pick. Had a good conversation with Danny Warfel this week on that.
Mm-hmm.
Another SEC headline, and not really a headline, but one I found funny one to throw in here. Kirby Smart was asked about, so Circa Sportsbook now has Georgia as the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. And look, they're the #1 team, but Bama's kind of been, Vegas odds makers. Vegas loves to put Alabama at top. Kirby Smart was asked about it. He said, I don't even know what that is. He told Dog Nation, I really don't trust the source. I don't care. I mean, look, I know what a coach has to say, but you've never heard of a sports book? You've never heard of Circa, Kirby?
Can confirm, Kirby Smart is the worst person you'd have on your bachelor party rankings of SEC coaches. I mean, I'm kidding when I say that because I think he'd be a blast. But yeah, that is kind of crazy, right? Like that he would say he wouldn't know that. It's also crazy just looking at this dad bod, how good of an athlete this man still is. It's just that cracks me up every time I see him. I will say that with those rankings, and I've been all over Georgia since the start of last summer, and saying they were going to win the national championship a year ago. I said before this season, I thought that Georgia would play Ohio State for the national championship, and Ohio State would win. That was my prediction going into the year. As of right now, I don't think Georgia's a better football team than Alabama. I just don't. Like if Bryce Young is back, I don't think they're a better team. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, one breath people do mention about Jalen Milroe last weekend, and then other mentions, it's like it just gets forgotten. It's like, well, Alabama's played 2 close games. Like, yeah, is last week even a close game if Bryce Young plays?
No. Or you have 4 turnovers and 2 missed field goals. That is very odd how they have that.
Speaking of injuries is a big talk of this week, so I'll just put 3 all together and just kind of get your thoughts collectively. Bryce Young, Nick Saban said Monday, he's being reevaluated, still kind of day-to-day. We don't know. We expect he'll be back. Sam Pittman went as far to say, KJ Jefferson is back this week. The BYU coach already commented on KJ Jefferson, so we'll see him this weekend. And then Rich Scangarello, Kentucky's OC, said Will Levis is still day-to-day, practiced, and is trending in the right direction. So it sounds like, at least right now, feels like all 3 of these guys are going to be back this weekend.
So Bryce, I saw something about this on Reddit, so it's real, but it was just talking about like the AC joint sprain and the injury itself. And it's like, I think that like one of the people that brought it up, it was like, you'll have like 10 to 15 throws and everything will be fine. And then something will happen. I think that Bama can run the football and win this game. What Bama can't do is get behind early and then turn the ball over as well, because it'll be a blowout in Tennessee's favor. But I will say, I think that he plays. I think that he'll be fine. And more than anything, if they don't, you still can lose this one. The stuff with KJ Jefferson, you gotta get right if you are Arkansas. You've lost 3 games in a row. They've seemingly, it felt like it's gotten worse each game. Like you're close against A&M, you're close against Bama for a minute, and then then last week you're just kind of blown out. Will Levis is Kentucky at this point, because Kentucky sucks without him. And I don't care how this sounds. I'm sorry, Kentucky fans. I know you guys get upset when I say this. I said a couple weeks ago I thought they were kind of shitty as a team, but you don't block for the quarterback well. You don't protect the quarterback, and you don't protect the football. And Will Levis is a huge, huge component to them being a good football team that could still win, 8-9 games. But if you don't protect the quarterback and you don't protect the football in this league, you're gonna get beat, and that's what's happened. That's why you got beat a week ago.
All right. He is Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. We'll continue with him as we take a look ahead at SEC Week 7 in just a second. But first, want to remind you guys about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can add your job in the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. You can start spreading the word that you are hiring. They give you simple tools like screening questions and much, much more. LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I was talking with some people who doing some holiday hiring coming up. Christmas holidays coming up very soon. LinkedIn Jobs, perfect place to go promote your job right there. Again, linkedinjobs.com/lockedoncollege. Continue on here, Locked On SEC, in our weekly segment with our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. And Marler got a couple of teams, 3 teams from the SEC with a bye week this week: Mizzou, Texas A&M, and South Carolina. It's just kind of funny when you talk about the 3 different ones. Like South Carolina feeling real good about themselves. Got a big win over Kentucky. Shane Beamer already saying, I feel like we're ahead of where we were at this time a year ago. Mizzou kind of, look, you've played some close games. You know, Eli Drinkwitz was kind of on the hot seat, but you played Georgia close, so maybe you feel a little bit better. Played a close game with Florida. And honestly, Mizzou lost 3 straight games close. Like, to me, you can't fire the guy. They're competitive. And A&M, you got 3 losses, but you're probably patting yourself on the back going, man, we almost beat Bama. So I don't know where those 3 fan bases are right now, but maybe not feeling too down on themselves.
No, so Carolina feels great. Carolina feels great. And I had this conversation earlier today with Chris Phillips in the Spurs Up show about how, you know, like it's amazing how quickly one game can turn all that around, because you go into a game where you don't look good in the first half against Charlotte. You look bad against Georgia State. You don't have a win on your schedule that makes you really proud as like a team, right? Like you got boat raced by Georgia. You lost. You got kind of boat raced by Arkansas. I forgot the other game they had in the SEC, but they have like, you know, they're 2-3 going in this game, and all this, or I'm sorry, they're 3-2 going in this game. And then all of a sudden you beat Kentucky, and it's like, whoa, we didn't only beat South Carolina State and Georgia State and Charlotte. Like, so I think they're feeling good, because that's a game that they've lost 8 of the last 9 years. If you're Mizzou, I think Mizzou is the most logical fan base in this conference, because it's the smartest fan base outside of Vandy. They're not gonna fire Drinkwitz, I don't think, this year. I think they're gonna give him another year and work with the recruits. Now, if he goes winless somehow in the rest of those games and loses Luther Burden, then yeah, bye. But A&M fans don't feel bad that much, because they're still coming off the high of almost losing to Bama. Get into next week. I think they lose to South Carolina next week, and if they do, that fan base is going to turn. You write it down.
That game, no, I'm looking to see that. It's at South Carolina, so
yeah, at night.
Hey, when that sandstorm gets going, brother, there ain't no Aggie yell leader that can save you. Which, by the way, I love that they're just doubling down with the yell leader trash talk. That's awesome. Don't stop. You know, like in these days where we stop things because people on social media made fun of you. Like, no, doubling down what you're doing. All right, let's get into a couple of games. We'll preview 3 games this segment, 3 games next segment. Let's get into it. The Brian Harsin denouement, if you will. Auburn at number 9, Ole Miss. The Rebels open as a 15-point favorite from BetOnline. This feels like a game that everybody is expecting Ole Miss to win big. And come Sunday morning, we'll all be looking for the Pete Thamel tweet. Brian Harsin has been relieved of his duties at Auburn.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say at this point. You're going into the bye week after this. I did not think he was going to be on the hot seat, man. I just didn't. I know it sounds stupid. I remember saying that to Andy Staples, and he was like, he already almost got fired. That's the definition of the hot seat. I was like, shut up, Andy. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't feel great about it. If you're an Auburn guy, those bags under those eyes now, and this picture you showed me, I didn't even notice. Those are new for sure. I think that Ole Miss is one of the best teams in the country. I think the SEC legitimately has 5 top 10 teams right now, legitimately, and I mean Ole Miss, Mississippi State as well. I don't think this will be close because I also think that Lane Kiffin's a big enough dickhead to be like, you know what, like I'm gonna put this guy out of his misery and see if there's a tarmac he can get fired on. So I'm not the only one that happened to him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Arson and certainly Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. You know, that the offense. What I liked about Kiffin and Ole Miss this past weekend was Kiffin was able to, or Ole Miss was able to win a game not just with their run game but with their passing game as well.
Yeah.
And, Jackson Dart, you know, if he had to throw the ball, he could throw the ball and win a game. So, again, interesting game, but it feels like this is an Ole Miss runaway, right?
No, I completely agree. Yeah, I think it'll like this is a game that it could be close early, but they will like we've seen this under Harsin repeatedly. You know, whoever he's playing will pull away in the second half and embarrass them, and that'll be it.
Get to our next game. It is Vandy at #1 Georgia, and look, it's Georgia's around a 38-point favorite. Give Vandy credit; they fought with Ole Miss for half last week and actually led them at halftime. But again, I feel like we don't need to say much about this game. Georgia, they played Kent State, and we were like, what the hell's going on? Then they played Mizzou, and we were like, okay, this might be their get-right game, and it wasn't. Auburn was their get-right game last week, and it feels like Auburn is just going to smash Vanderbilt.
Georgia, yeah, I agree. And I think that Kirby Smart, like, it's hard to get mad about Vandy and like, if you're Vandy, be on someone's bad side, but I think that they're still probably on Kirby's bad side, which is kind of crazy to think because if you remember a couple of years ago, this is the game where this is the last game of the year for the COVID year for Georgia and those seniors, and they did not get a senior day because of the Vandy game being canceled, which they found out midweek. And Kirby, if you thought that he didn't care about that, you saw last year. I remember waking up at like 12:30. Like on game day, which was not very professional. Had a long night the night before. But I was like, what is going on? JT Daniels didn't start. And they're like, no. He's already out of the game early in the first quarter. They're up like 28-0 or something. It was something crazy like that. But yeah, I mean, they held him to like 63 yards. I think Vandy scores if the Vandy, like if their team total from Vegas is over 6.5, take Vandy. Take that, like that bet for Vandy, because I think they're going to score on this defense. Yeah, but I think Georgia wins this game. I think they win it going away. I just don't know if they are able to shut out Vandy. I think Vandy's offense is still. I'm still not high on it, but I'm not like I'm not mid on it. You know what I mean?
Well, let's get into the another one of and this one's crazy. It's unranked teams. 3-3 Arkansas at 4-2 BYU. 2:30 Central on ESPN. What a weird game for Georgia for Arkansas to be in. And this is one that I thought, man, it was a weird game where it falls on the schedule, but it's even weirder now that you're riding a 3-game losing streak. This is a game that Arkansas could certainly lose as well.
Yeah, BYU's really good. Like, I don't know if I think my favorite thing in college football this season from the media is Pat McAfee talking about BYU in any capacity, because him bringing up the fact that this is the oldest team in the history of college football because they're all like 26 with the COVID year and having to take that 2-year trip. I don't know, to Orlando or wherever Book of Mormon's from. So BYU is good enough. BYU is good enough to be, I'm glad you got that reference. BYU is good enough to beat Arkansas. I don't know. See, this has got to be a game where KJ Jefferson takes over. The run game has to take over. But the defense cannot just get torched like it has been at all season. I just, it worries me in that capacity because they're just so bad on the back half. I think the good news out of this for Arkansas is they're finally getting to a point to realize that Barry Odom is not that great of a coordinator.
Yeah. And what's crazy is they were bashing him, but this past week, they, like Odom's been the whipping boy, I guess you'd say, for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
This week was the first time Kendall Briles was getting criticism, and they were like, hey, man, we get KJ's out, but you didn't have Hornsby or Kate Fortin even ready to go in this game.
Yeah, it looked bad. It looked bad early. This is a game that I had circled from the beginning of the year because I was like, I kept telling it to Arkansas fans, and I said it to Pittman at media days. I was like, who did you hurt? Like, what did you do to deserve this schedule? The schedule is brutal. So hopefully it'll get better. But yeah, I kind of feel like this is a must-win game for them.
Well, you also told him what was it that he was such and such against the spread?
It was 16-6 against the spread. Thank you.
And he said, hogs. All right, more with Chris Marler in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys about our friends over at Built Bar. If you have not tried the Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. There is a new flavor. It is the indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. Built has done it again. Cookie dough chunk puffs, a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs, only 160 calories, have a whopping 15 grams of protein in there. Run to Built.com right now. Snag your box for you and your family. Use our promo code LOCKEDON15. That gets you 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKEDON15. That's going to get you 15% off at Built.com. Go grab those cookie dough chunk puffs today. All right, roll along here with Chris Marler. One more segment to go. And Marler, we got three pretty big games in the conference this weekend. We'll start with one of the our lone unranked one that we have left. It's 4-2 LSU at 4-2 Florida. It's the year one coaches. It's Billy Napier versus Brian Kelly. And man, talk about two programs who are just like, we're feeling pretty good about Brian Kelly after that week one loss to Florida State. They've looked good every week, and then they go and get blown out to Tennessee. Meanwhile, Florida, they have the big emotional win over Utah. Yeah. They lose to Kentucky, and it's been this like roller coaster ever since. So where are we on these two teams?
Yeah, I'm looking at a ranking from my actual employer right now that has Billy Napier as the 6th-ranked coach in the conference, and Brian Kelly at 9, which is just tough. Just not my
Is
favorite.
that just for this week?
It's for the whole year.
Okay.
Yeah. That's about right. Anyway, I just, as I'm scolding our young social media person who posted it, this is a great game. Again, this is a great weekend of football, and it's kind of crazy because this is one of those things where like the LSU Florida game is a great rivalry. I don't know how this plays out. What time is the game, you said?
It's a night game. It's will be 7 Eastern in Gainesville.
Okay, so how does Brian Kelly respond to after last week? Because I thought they played desperate last week. I thought they played like almost like an embarrassing style of football. I will say, and I meant to bring this up earlier, you nailed it on the head more than anything. You brought up on our podcast on College Football Uncensored. You said if you got to come out there, you got to try to slow them down early. But if you find yourselves down, and you said, and I quote, 20-0. Like, which is the exact number you said, and that's what they ended up finding themselves down early on. I don't expect them to come out and play that desperate again. I think that was like a little bit of an overreach from Brian Kelly. They have all the tools in place to beat the team. And it wasn't like Florida looked very good last week.
Right. Yeah. Anthony Richardson, I don't know what happened. Like, we're feeling so good about him, and then he throws for, what was it, 80 yards or 60 yards?
60.
Like, what is going on, dude? Why? Like, we thought you were becoming a good quarterback again.
Did you see the receivers numbers?
Oh, yeah. No, it was ugly. I mean,
the best receiver or the top receiver had 1 catch for 20 yards.
Before I watched the highlights of that game, I'm like, what the hell happened? I mean, the Jaden Hill pick 6 obviously helped propel them, and then another interception. But, man, that just looked like an ugly game all around.
Yeah.
You got a pick in this one? You taking LSU on the road or Florida at home?
I'm going to – listen, you idiots have gotten me in so much trouble, but I love you to death, and I'm taking LSU to win on the road. I don't know how I feel about that. And it's also, is Florida going to play a road game?
Yeah, it feels like every game has been at the Swamp. I'm going with the Gators at home. I just think that atmosphere. If it was an 11 a.m. game and Florida fumbled the opening kickoff, maybe
right.
LSU wins that game. Number 16 Mississippi State is at number 22 Kentucky. Man, the Mike Leaches are just rolling. We talked about it earlier with Will Rogers, but Kentucky's defense, are you up to the task? And Will Rogers, if you're back, man, you're going to have to play lights out to keep up with them.
You know that I'm a big fan of Mr. and Mrs. Gordy, and I know that your wife is a Kentucky grad, right? A Kentucky alum. This fan base, I just like, again, here's what happens. Here, like, if you can't protect the quarterback and you can't protect the football, you're not going to win football games. And I could easily, if Levis is back and Rodriguez isn't fumbling like he seems to do in every key moment he's ever involved in, like, I just don't get it why we give this kid such a free pass on so many things. But if Levis is back and he's healthy and all that kind of stuff, then sure, they could win this game. They could win it, in great fashion. But Zach Arnett and that defense, Mississippi State, that's all they do is blitz. And this is a Kentucky team that gave up 6 sacks to South Carolina a week ago. They've given up 25 on the year, I think, and like 6. I mean, that's just so bad. And so I'm taking Mississippi State, man. I think Mississippi State is one of the top 10 teams in the country right now, the way they're playing and the way Will Rogers is playing. And I think that there's honestly, even going into this weekend, there's a legitimate path that I wouldn't argue against if you told me that the SEC championship was between Tennessee and a Mississippi school by the end of the year.
Wow. I think we would all be sad.
Yeah, I mean,
no one did that, right?
Yeah. It would not be a fun trip.
All right, let's get to the game of the week. It is number 3 Alabama 6-0 at number 6 Tennessee 5-0. It's the third Saturday in October, and it finally means something, Marler. It's a series that Alabama has dominated for over a decade plus. Finally, it looks like we're going to get a competitive one.
Yeah, I hope not. I will say that Tennessee's been a lot of fun to watch this year. They've been great under Heupel, and I said this earlier this week. I don't know if they go 10-2, if Tennessee or better, right? Like if they go 10-2 and they lose to the teams we expected them to lose to in the beginning of the year against Georgia and against Bama, and they do it in respectable fashion, you can't really convince me otherwise that this rebuild this quickly from Heupel isn't more impressive than what Saban did in his first 2 years. Because, Tennessee was in a lot of those games a year ago. The 30 people they lost, the transfer portal. Anyway, getting into this year's team and not just like the big picture of Tennessee, Hendon Hooker has been incredible. I think he's at 47 touchdowns and like 2 interceptions since he became the starting quarterback. They get Cedric Tillman back, who the best thing about Cedric Tillman, outside of already being one of the top 3 to 5 receivers in the SEC, maybe the country, is Cedric Tillman in big games is a lot of fun to watch. I think he had about 200 against I don't have it in front of me, but I think he had 200 against Georgia or something crazy. He had 150 against Alabama. I know he had over 100 in both those games. He had a great bowl game, I think, where he had like 3 touchdowns maybe.
Went off against Akron.
Went off against Akron. But he steps up in big games a lot. I think he's a really, really good player. And it's kind of crazy to think about how good they've been without him. The defense steps up a week ago. They have 5 sacks on the road against LSU. I think it's a defense that's improved week in and week out. We all know that fan base, everybody in the country besides Big Game Boomer understands that fan base is fired up. That's why it's sold out. And the secondary market tickets going for $400 in the upper deck. It's because people want to be in the building for that. I don't know if you saw that tweet earlier today, but I was cracking up from that. But no, I think if Bryce Young plays, and I don't know why I have this feeling, and maybe I'm wrong. My instincts are almost always wrong, especially with women, like I always tell you. But if Bryce Young plays, I think Bama wins by 10 plus points. I think if Bryce plays and they keep him upright and he's healthy, Jahmyr Gibbs, if I don't see them turning the ball over like that dramatically, like all of the struggles they've had in the past couple of games have been without Bryce Young. So if he doesn't play, I think Tennessee could win. I think Tennessee could win by double digits. I really do. But if he plays, I don't think Bama loses, and I don't even know if it's a struggle because of how good that cheetah package is and how good that defense is.
And look, at this point, we're expecting Jalen Hurts to play, but if he doesn't, I feel like they've learned
Bryce
some. What'd I say?
Jalen Hurts.
Did I say Jalen Hurts? I was watching the friggin' NFL a minute ago, and Jalen. If Bryce Young plays. Or if he doesn't play, I think Bill O'Brien and company are going to look at what Jalen Milroe did the last couple of weeks and figure out the good and the bad. What's he comfortable with? And, not put – first off, don't fumble. Don't lose the football. But I think they're going to look at it and say, we got to ride Jahmyr Gibbs. Do you realize Jahmyr Gibbs, the past 2 weeks, has had 39 carries for 360 yards?
No.
Like, that's put him third in the SEC. He's only behind Rocket Sanders and Quinshon Judkins now. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs has quickly gone from, oh, man, we're told he was going to be star from Georgia Tech to suddenly he is the face of the Alabama offense. And so if it's Milroe, I think Gibbs still gives them a chance.
Can I give you a number real quick that's going to crack you up?
Yes.
And I have to bring it up. So a week ago, Bama had the top 2 rushing leaders in the country for yards per carry. Right. And it was Jason McClellan and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now they have the top 2. I'm sorry, they have 2 of the top 4. But there's somebody at number 5 that is 5th in the country in average yards per rush. You want to guess who it is? He's averaging, I'll give you, he's averaging 8.28 yards per carry, which Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging 8.31. So this person is right behind him. He has 8 rushing touchdowns. And I'll give you one hint that he is not a running back.
It's Milroe.
It's Bo Nix.
Oh.
Bo Nix is killing it, man. No, but you're right. I think the Jahmyr Gibbs thing, it's like you gotta have him kind of be the guy, and you gotta find somebody in that blank passing game to somewhat like take some pressure off of him in the running game, and Bill O'Brien. That's it.
Hey, man, the good news is there are plenty of good jobs open now and plenty of good jobs on the way open for Bill O'Brien. All right? So,
very true.
Yeah, if you're Nick Saban, you tell him, hey, man, don't get too comfy here. Keep that box fresh. You're on the way out. He is Chris Marler. College Football Uncensored is the podcast. Thanks for doing it, man. We'll talk to you again next week.
Of course, man. Look forward to it every week. I hope you have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, here's Chris Marler. We'll talk with him again next week. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Appreciate you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you can make your second listen. Check out some of our other great podcasts on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Some great guests still throughout the week. You don't want to miss it. Keep it locked right here to Locked On SEC.